Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. A Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom. If everybody with the Siddur can turn to page 6, and we can read together. At the top of the page, we enter this sanctuary. We enter this sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured, a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. And now please turn to page 10 and join me in singing Hine Matov at the top of the page. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, Hine Matov, yadai dai 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 dai. Hine Matov, Hine Matov, yadai dai 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 dai. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good and how pleasant it is that brothers and sisters dwell together. Let's turn to page 2 and rise and join me for the lighting of the Shabbat candles. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. Please remain standing and join Aiden in singing the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon kinhilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah למקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, קיוונו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen. Chaim. Okay, you may be seated. And please join me on page 7 as we read together, Where Has This Week Vanished? Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time. Contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat abide. And please now turn to page 12 and join me for Lechuna Ranana. Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. Naria, Naria, Litzur Yishenu, Nekad Mafana Bitoda. Naria, Naria, Litzur Yishenu, Bizmirok Naria Lo, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. We got there. That's okay. You know, no one said this was ever going to be perfect, okay? Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. Now let's turn to page 20, and let's do Lechado D. And please remember that we're going to sing the first 2 verses, and at the beginning of the 3rd verse, I'll raise my hand, and we're all going to turn around and face that west door, and we're going to welcome the Shabbat bride. Okay? Lechado di likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nekabala. 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 Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad. Hishmianu elcham yuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Leshem ultiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kalam. Panei Shabbat nikabalam. Lecha dodi likrat kalam. Panei Shabbat nikabalam. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nilcha. Ki hi mechor habrachad meherosh michadem. En sucha sof maseh b'machashava techilat. Lecha dodi likrat kalam. Panei Shabbat nikabalam. Lecha dodi likrat kalam. Panei Shabbat nikabalam. Bohi vishalom ateret bala. Gam simcha u'sochola toch emunei. Am segula bohi chala. Lecha dodi likrat kalam. Panei Shabbat nikabalam. Lecha dodi likrat kalam. Panei Shabbat nikabalam. Beautiful. You may all be seated. And I'm going to recite a poem called For the Arrival of Shabbat by Alden Solovey. Well of my life, bless my heart with the gifts of Shabbat. The presence of your love in my pulse, your glory in my chest, and your wonder in my breath. Bless my eyes with the gifts of Shabbat, seeing the beauty of the candlesticks, the Kiddush cups, and the chalot. Bless my lips with the gifts of Shabbat, rejoicing in song and prayer, singing melodies ancient and new. Bless my ears with the gifts of Shabbat, hearing hymns and praises, the nigunim of old and blessed words of Torah. Bless my soul with the gifts of Shabbat, awe and thanksgiving, calm and surrender, beauty, righteousness, and peace. Let these gifts descend gently on all your people, Israel, so that together, wherever we may be, in one voice, from the four corners of the earth, we sing, Boachem la shalom, come in peace. Malachei hashalom, messengers of peace. Malachei elyon, angels of Most High. So please, let's turn to page 24. And let's welcome the messengers of peace and Shabbat by singing together Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Elohe Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then continue with me in English at the bottom of page 24. Peace be to you, O ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Enter in peace, O messengers of peace, angels of the Most High, Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Bless me with peace, O messengers of peace, angels of the Most High, Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Depart in peace, O messengers of peace, angels of the Most High, Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Please turn to page 26 and join Aidan in singing the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabba. Be'amad yivarachyote v'yamlich malchute. B'chayechon uvyomechon ufchaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala, ba'agala, uvizman kariv, v'imru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach, le'olam ulam me'almaya, yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushmechata v'nechemata, damiran b'alma, v'imru, amen.
Very good. And would everyone please turn to page 146 and rise for the Baruch Hu. And Aidan will lead us in the Baruch Hu. $146. Please wait for me to get back so I can get to my prayer book. Yeah, 146. Okay.
Baruch et Adonai hamivorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai hamivorach leolam vaed.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, leave the doors open, close the curtain. You may be seated. Okay, let's turn to the following page. And please join me in reading the Ma'ariv Aravim at the top of page 140, in English, at the bottom of page 147. Adonai, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and stars testify to your power and wisdom. Day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures. Though all things pass, let not your glory depart from us. Help us to become co-workers with you and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Now let's turn to page 148 and join me in reading the Ahavat Olam in English at the bottom, in the middle of the page. In each age, we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment, we are addressed by the world. In each age, we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment, we stand face to face with truth. In each age, we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment, the knowing heart is filled with wonder. In each age, the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Okay. And let's turn to page 149 and let's do the Shema. Okay. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hashem, kivod malchuto, le'olam va'ed. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God. Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. And please turn to page 150 and join Aidan for the Ve'ahavta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anohi mitzavecha hayom olevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'shartam le'od ayadecha v'hayu letotafot ein einecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha L'man tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohehem ani Adonai Elohehem asher hotzeiti etem me'eretz Mitzrayim l'chiyot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohehem.
Okay, let's turn to page 152 and join me in singing the Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha negar b'kodesh. No ra tehilot, o sehefele, no ra tehilot, o sehefele. Let's go to the middle of page 152 and let's read responsively. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Okay, let's turn to page 154 and join me in singing Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Bein uvein b'nei Yisrael, b'nei Yisrael, otit le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Ki sheshet yamin Asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et ha'oretz, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat lahazot, et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i, Shabbat vayanafash, Shabbat vayanafash, Shabbat vayanafash, Vishamru v'nei Yisrael, Shabbat lahazot et ha-shabbat ledoret hamarit olam. Excellent. Okay. Please join me on page 155 for the tefillah. And after the tefillah, please take some time for silent prayer or meditation. We'll finish in the middle of page 167 with the singing of Oseh Shalom. So please rise and join me in the tefillah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufid yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Oseh Shalom bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Yisrael. Okay. So welcome everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Time for the drash. Whenever I'm called to the Bima to lead a Friday night Shabbat service, I have a ritual or set of rules I follow to prepare myself for the work. The first thing I do is create a file within my web browser and on my computer file directories. This allows me to stay organized and gives me a place to store information I gather while I put together my service outline and write my Devar Torah. Next, I go to my favorite Jewish religious website called myjewishlearning.org. There are many websites on the internet with significant Jewish liturgical content. What I like about myjewishlearning.org is it provides a good place to start with my reading of the English translation of the Torah portion for my upcoming Shabbat service. Once within my Jewish Learning's website, I enter the name of the parashat and look for the text and, most importantly, commentaries on the text written by rabbis, cantors, and other legitimate biblical scholars regarding that evening's parashat. I admit that without the insights provided by these religious and biblical professionals, I'd be pretty much lost regarding what to make of the Torah's text. These scholarly commentaries provide an historical and philosophical context within which to understand the deeper meaning of the storyline. So for those of you who don't possess a Jewish calendar that tells you what each week's parashat is, tonight I'm going to discuss Mishpatim, Exodus 21:1 to 24:18. And Mishpatim translates to laws or rules. I started my preparation for tonight with reading a written summary of the parashat's storyline. Mishpatim picks up where last week's parashat Yitro leaves off. In Yitro, Moses descends from Sinai and gives the Ten Commandments to the Israelites, thus sealing the covenant between God and the children of Israel. In Mishpatim, it becomes apparent that the Israelites are probably getting more than they bargained on. In Yitro, the Ten Commandments are the broad conceptual brushstrokes of the contract between God and the Israelites. In Mishpatim, both the Israelites and the reader begin to see the contract's fine print. And thus begins an account of the various rules that regulate the life of a pious Jew. This is a theme we see repeated many times in the Tanakh or Hebrew Bible. So the fact that the rule-making and delineation begins here is noteworthy. As I began to read the summary of the parashat, I had to admit to myself, this story sounded familiar. Where else had I read this story? After the summary, I went to the biblical text itself, and it really started to ring a bell. I said to myself, I think I've previously written a Devar Torah on this parashat. I went back through my computer's file directory, and I quickly found that on February 12th of last year, I was on this very bima pontificating about Mishpatim. I read through my Devar Torah from last year, and I thought to myself, this isn't a bad piece of writing. And then, being the person I am, being a little bit lazy and a little bit of an opportunist, I thought, why not save myself the time, energy, and intellectual effort of writing a whole new drash when I could reuse the one I had so dutifully slaved over the previous year? I mean, who would even remember that I led the service on February 12th, 2021, that the parashat was Mishpatim, or what it was I had so brilliantly spoken about? I can tell you who, nobody. Nobody would know but me. It was at this point I began to question the propriety of doing something like this. I mean, here I am about to discuss rule-making in Mishpatim, and wasn't I contemplating breaking a Mishpatim, a rule for a basic level of intellectual honesty? Exactly how kosher was it reusing a previously written drash? It wasn't as though I'd be plagiarizing anyone's work, as it was already my work. And so began my own struggle with God. And this made me feel pretty Jewish because, as we all know, the word Israel means to struggle with God. I mean, how great was this? Here I was in the middle of arguing with myself regarding should I or should I not avoid the hard work of leading a service. Clearly, I was having my own little existential crisis. Well, this was something that would take on greater clarity with the dawn of a new day and the fortification of several cups of strong coffee. The next morning dawned bright and clear, and while sitting with Linda and finishing my second cup, I confessed I had a bit of a moral dilemma on my hands. I related to her my desire to be expedient and reuse last year's drosh, but felt conflicted as to whether this was the right thing to do. I admitted this seemed like a lot of surus over how much of a biblical scholar I was going to pretend to be that week. As she always does in these situations, Linda gave me the only advice that made any real sense. She said, "Don't be a ninny. Of course you should write a new drosh. It's part of what you took on when you agreed to be a lay service leader. It's part of the covenant you have with the congregation." She said, "Look here, right there in the fine print of your contract with the synagogue, it says, 'Thou shalt not be a lazy bum.'" She told me in a parashat the size of Mishpatim, there must be more than one topic you can write about. She said, "Go forth and do the right thing by the congregation. Follow the rules, be accountable, and write a new Devar Torah." So back to the drawing board I went, looking for a salient and profound piece of text in the Mishpatim upon which I could build my next magnus opus. And lo and behold, there it was, staring me in the face. The very first of the rules in Mishpatim deals with the proper treatment of Hebrew slaves by none other than the Israelites themselves. Are you serious? How is it the children of Israel, just recently liberated from generations of harsh indentured servitude to the Egyptians, find themselves slave owners? And not just your run-of-the-mill garden variety slave owners. These were Jews who owned the lives and labor of other Jews. Anyone who has read any history knows that slavery is probably an institution that's older than recorded history itself. What wasn't clear to me until I started leading services and more closely reading the Tanakh was the fact that Jews, the people of the Hebrew Bible, the people who invented the concept of a codified civil society, a society that, at least on parchment, professed to care about following the law and caring for the weaker members of their community. These Jews, our people, were slave owners. Anyone who reads the Hebrew Bible can, by modern standards, find much of what is written to be challenging and problematic. And reading in the Bible about how to properly treat your human chattel is particularly troublesome. But this is where we need to put on our thinking caps and look at the Tanakh as a product of the era in which it was written. It doesn't excuse the practice of slavery, but in this case, it can put it into perspective. First and foremost, the institution of slavery was a well-established fact within every society in the ancient Middle East. And in all likelihood, this was true throughout all of the civilized and uncivilized world at that time. And earlier in the Bible, we read about how Joseph's brothers, Jacob's sons, sell Joseph into slavery. And so Joseph becomes the first Jewish slave in Egypt. This is the same Joseph who later becomes a powerful man within Egypt, second in command to Pharaoh. During a time of famine in the Transjordan region, Joseph invites his brothers and their families to join him in Egypt, thus setting into motion the eventual enslavement of the Israelites by Pharaoh. So without trying to justify a brutal and inhumane practice, slavery is not an unknown quantity in the Hebrew Bible. But the thing I find interesting about this parashat is how quickly it moves away from a discussion of slavery and begins to lay out a framework for a more equitable and just society. A modern reading of the text may make many of the rules in Mishpatim seem arcane and just strange. But keep in mind that for the time when the Torah was codified, approximately 500 BCE, most of the rules are good practical advice and a means to adjudicate injustices, avoid vendettas, and help a community avoid social unrest. Amy Silver, writes in a blog called Aleph Beta. In it, he says the following about Mishpatim. I think it's interesting that the Parsha itself and the laws within it are called Mishpatim. There are many names for laws, and this is a very specific one. The word mishpat actually means justice, which seems to imply that these aren't just laws about what we should or should not do. They are laws that are about restoring the balance of justice when it's been broken. We can see this in many of the laws themselves. If you break someone's property, this is what you owe them. If you injure or harm someone, this is how much you must repay them. Or this is your punishment. These are all laws about reparations. So as early as 2,500 years ago, the ancient scribes, in telling the story of Exodus, were trying to lay out a legal framework that would allow not only for the humane treatment of indentured servants, but also, more importantly, create an immutable pathway for them to their freedom. As we see every day in newspaper stories about failed states, the number one issue is a lack of accountability and enforcement of that country's mishpatim. In order for there to be justice, there must, from top to bottom, be accountability within a community. Whether it's writing a fresh drash every time you are called to the bima, or you are a nation's leader, there have to be rules that everyone is accountable to and, in fact, are followed. What do people say? No justice, no peace. Without adherence to a rules-based society, there is chaos. There is no peace. In this way, we see once again what a remarkably revolutionary document the Hebrew Bible was for its time. I have to admire the writers of the Torah. Having witnessed the destruction of their kingdom by the Babylonians, were they trying to rebuild Judea into a rules-based kingdom? I would hazard a guess so. I encourage everyone here tonight to recommit yourselves to following the mishpatim, the rules of our society. Let us all work to see the day when no one is enslaved, either figuratively or literally, by the unjust actions of those who refuse to follow the rules that lead to justice. Let's all work for a more equitable and rules-based society. Let us all work for peace. For the day peace is universally celebrated, it will mean that we have established a world that embraces justice for everyone, not just those privileged few who are able to afford it. Shabbat Shalom. Okay. It was worth the effort, yes. Thank you. Okay, let's turn back to page 117 and join me at the top there. Let's read together When Justice Burns. Page 117 at the top. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when, to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives, and we can begin to change the world. And then you live in our hearts, and we, through righteousness, behold your presence. I'd like to read another poem, here again by Alden Soloby. It's called The Axis of Healing. Your heart is the axis of healing, drawing passion and fire from the hot core of the earth, drawing energy and possibility from the pulsing edge of the universe, drawing light from the shadows and the secret brilliance that surrounds us, so that your mind is clear and your body radiates love. Your heart is the axis of healing, drawing empathy from the pain of others, drawing inspiration when you witness sorrow. Transformed into hope so that your deeds are pure, your hands strong and tender, and your life becomes the medicine that heals the world. Now let us turn our prayers to those in our community in need of physical or spiritual healing. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless these members of our community. May Burns, Robin Cohen, Diana Heller, Rob Hirsch, Leslie Kasanoff, Barbara and Chip Kurtzman, Beryl Levine, Kit Levine, Emily Moss, Jackson Moss, Leah Moss, Rick Moss, Dave Podolsky, George Ramsdell, Jackie Ramsdell, Philip Ramsdell, Margaret Schmidt, Elliot Schwartz, Cheryl Shellub, John Sitters, Ellen, and Michael Weingarten. And at this time, please mention anybody whose name has not been mentioned here, someone who you know might be in need of spiritual or physical healing. Okay. Very good. Send them all comfort and relief speedily in our days, and grant them a complete healing of body, mind, and spirit. Blessed are you, source of life, who helps us to bring light where there is darkness, and healing where there is brokenness. And now, please turn to page 253 and join me in the Mishaberach. Mishaberach Avotenu Mechor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Makor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Excuse me. Okay, let's all turn to page 282, and let's rise and join Aidan in the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'teit gedula le'otzer reshit, shalom asanu
Shamayim v'yosher haaretz, u'moshe v'yakaro b'shamayim immo, u'shenatu ze v'vochei romin, u'Eloheinu Eihud, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Yep.
Okay. Please remain standing. Let's turn to page 287 and let's sing the Ne'amar. 1 second. Let me get there. 287. Okay. Yeah, I'm ready. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al haaretz bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Okay. Let's remain standing, and let's turn to page 291, and let us read together. At the top of page 291, it is hard. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were, in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do our best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one, whose life, now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, and for those who are observing the yahrzeit of a loved one. Excuse me. This Shabbat we remember Stuart Cohen of blessed memory, William Lowe, father of Jean Lowe, Sidney Kasanoff, father of Leslie Kasanoff, Sherry Trevor, aunt of Linda Pryor, Hannah Schwartz, mother of Sharon George. And we remember Phil Cole, husband of Kathy Cole, who passed away this week. We take into our hearts all those who have no one to say Kaddish for them, either light the yahrzeit, I will now light the yahrzeit candle unless one of you is observing the anniversary of someone's death, okay? And then Aidan will lead us in the Kaddish. Okay, so let's turn to page 294, and let's read the Kaddish with Aidan.
Yit Gadol v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah B'yalma Divarach Hirutei V'yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon U'v'yomechon U'v'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'vizman Kariv V'yimru Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam U'lamei Amaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitroman V'yitnaseh V'yithadar, v'yithalev, v'yithalal, shemei dekudasha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yalma v'yimru, amen. V'yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, b'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'yimru, amen. Osei shalom bin romav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, amen. You may be seated. I apologize for having to talk around a throat lozenge, but it was either that or you'd have to listen to me cough through the end of the service, so thank you for your patience there. Okay, I'd like to read a prayer for our country.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we invoke your blessing upon our country, on the government and leaders of our nation, and on all who exercise rightful authority in our community. Guide them out of your law that they may do their important work with justice and equity, uniting our communities in kinship for the common good, safeguarding our ideals and institutions of freedom. Bless and protect these brave women and men who risk their lives to protect the welfare of your creation, and keep them from harm as they work to maintain peace and security for all. May it be your will that you lead them in peace and that you bless the work of their hands and deeds and fill their hearts with faith and courage. Grant us true peace and fulfillment of the words of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against another nation, nor shall they learn war anymore. Okay, I have a few announcements. We have some birthdays this week, as we do every week. And Dave Podolsky has a birthday on Tuesday, February 1st. And an anniversary. Ellen and Michael Weingarten on Monday, January 31st. How many years, Michael? 52 years, Mazel Tov. That's pretty fantastic. Congratulations. I think so. I think it's pretty amazing. Congratulations. You're welcome. I have one more announcement. Next week on Tuesday, materials will be delivered to the west parking lot for our fence and gate project. So we're about to get that started. That will provide a fence and gates all the way around the perimeter of the synagogue proper. It will not include the east parking lot, but it'll include the west parking lot and the synagogue proper. And so starting on Wednesday or Thursday right now, the project is going to start. If it doesn't start Wednesday or Thursday, then it will start the following week. But once the materials are delivered, and so effectively starting Friday night, February 4th, when we have our guest cantor, I'd like to remind people to please use the east parking lot only, not the west parking lot. The other thing is, once the construction starts, it will in fact be a construction site. And even though our fencing contractor is going to exercise every effort to make sure that the area around the synagogue remains safe, please remember, it's a construction site. So please watch your step. Okay? So with that, I'd like to thank all the people who made this, tonight's service in line. Yes? Oh, I apologize, yes. And let's not forget, next Friday night, we have a guest cantorial soloist, Shira Fox. And we had a great turnout for Rabbi Ira Rosenfeld. I'm hoping we can get the same kind of number of congregants showing up for Friday night service. It'll be a real pleasure to listen to Cantor Fox lead the service. We understand she has a spectacular voice. And so I encourage everybody to show up. That's correct. And so the service on Friday night starts at 7:30. At 9:30 on Saturday, February 5th, there is a Torah study. And then that'll run for an hour or so. And then coming back in the afternoon at 4:30, there is a kids service, and then followed immediately by a Havdalah. So from 4:30 approximately till 6 in the evening on Saturday night. Anything else? We good? Fantastic. Okay. So now, let me thank everybody who made tonight's live stream and service possible. First and foremost, Cindy Dixon Levine, who is our talented piano accompanist. Also, I would like to congratulate Aiden, who's going to be bar mitzvah here in the middle of February. I think he did a phenomenal job, so mazel tov to you. It's been a pleasure to watch Aiden over these last 12 months. He's really gained a lot of confidence, and I think he's just going to hit it out of the park on February 19th at his bar mitzvah. I'd also like to thank Thor, who's running the video feed. Thank you so much, Thor, for being here to help us. I'd also like to thank Nakshon Margalit, Leslie Moss, and all of the members of our congregation who help out by leading our Friday night services. So everyone, thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.